From the pages of MikeHuckabee.com, where you're going to find all my columns and hot takes on the news of the day, and you can have my insights beam right in the middle of your email inbox for absolutely free. All you got to do, just sign up for my newsletter. Let's right now take another look back at some of the stories that made up the week that was. Well, if you haven't had enough of the COVID pandemic, how about a climate emergency as a cause of illness? Last June, a story out of British Columbia made international news when a hospital doctor who had been treating people made sick by an extreme heat wave diagnosed climate change as the cause of a patient's illness. The patient was having an asthma attack. It was aggravated by smoke from a wildfire, which the doctor blamed on increasing heat waves, ostensibly caused by climate change. But in all the media ballyhoo over the climate change, it's now officially a pandemic narrative. I wonder, did anyone bother to ask, was that diagnosis actually accurate? Or is it just propaganda disguised as quackery? Well, someone asked the question. Meteorologist Anthony Watts of the whatsupwiththat.com climate change site dug into the science of it. Yeah, the real science. Since the diagnosis rested on the assumptions that wildfires are much worse now due to more frequent heat waves and higher temperatures caused by global warming, he examined both of those claims. In a study called "Was Global Warming the Cause of the Great Northwest Heat Wave?" science says no. University of Washington meteorology expert Dr. Cliff Mass wrote that, quote, "If global warming was producing extreme heat waves in our region, such as the event last week, there would be a long-term trend towards more extreme high temperatures," end quote. But the records show that there had been no increasing trend for more record high temperatures over our region during the entire past century. But what about all the worsening wildfires? We hear a lot about those in California, where state officials insist that they're caused by global warming and not by the incompetent forest management by left-wing state officials. Well, Watts checked NASA satellite data. That shows a long-term decline in wildfires worldwide, with a 25% decrease of burned land area since the year 2003. So if there is no increase in heat waves or wildfires, maybe the patient's asthma attack wasn't caused by a climate change apocalypse, but maybe by the fact that he's got asthma and he breathed in smoke from a forest fire, which had been happening in the Pacific Northwest since the dawn of time. And by the way, it didn't really require Dr. House to diagnose that. Next up, let's check in with President Joe Biden, concerned about fires himself this week, also out and about selling his Build Back Better something or other.
Conversations around those kitchen tables that are both profound as they are ordinary. How do I cross a bridge in a snowstorm? What happened? Think about it. You know, you're in a situation, what happens if the bridge collapses and there's a fire on the other side? It's going to take 10 miles longer to get to the fire. People can die. I mean, this is real. This is real stuff.
How do we cross a bridge if there's a fire in a snowstorm, Dad? Yes, I'm sure that's a very common dinner table discussion there, no doubt. That was strange, wasn't it? Well, the Biden administration this week was also trying to push through another one of their radical nominees, this one to head up the office of the Comptroller of the Currency, someone named Saulomarova. Here's Senator John Kennedy chatting with her.
In 2019, you joined a Facebook group, a Marxist Facebook group, to discuss socialist and anti-capitalist views. Now, that's what I see from your record. And you have the right to believe every one of these things. You do. This is America. But I don't mean any disrespect. I don't know whether to call you professor or comrade.
Comrade Omarova would fit right in with this administration, but not so much with normal Americans who maybe are increasingly fed up with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris who, by the way, was out trying to do some damage control, as their poll numbers continue to crater.
We had a tough poll for the president this week at ABC News with the Washington Post. Highest disapproval of his presidency shows that most Americans don't think the administration is keeping its promises. How do you explain that, and how do you fix it?
You know, George, polls, they go up, they go down. But I think what is most important is that we remain consistent.
Oh, you're being consistent. That might be a problem. Maybe, just maybe, this is all a sign that you're on the wrong track, as in your policies are wrong, and they're forcing Americans to pay more and pay more and pay more to fill up their gas tanks and put food on the table, and at the same time have to hear endless lectures about racism, sexism, equity, woke this, woke that. As Americans gather together around the Thanksgiving table next week, I think a lot of Biden-Harris voters are going to be feeling some buyer's remorse. You're finding out the hard way just how expensive that ticket really was. Finally, one last grand gesture from Mayor Big Bird of New York. He just couldn't help himself with this one. Because if you're making New Year's Eve plans to be in Times Square to see the ball drop, and I don't know why you'd want to, but if you do, you're going to have to prove you got the jab, or show proof of a negative COVID test within the previous 72 hours. Oh, and you got to have a photo ID. Let me repeat that last one. You got to have a photo ID. That sounds like a racist attempt to suppress minority participation in New Year's Eve to me. And after all the police budget cuts under de Blasio, New York doesn't even have enough cops on the street to keep people from robbing and shooting each other. Yet de Blasio seems to think that there are enough cops to stand around on New Year's Eve demanding to see 100,000 sets of papers to ensure that it's safe to stand around outdoors. At least New Yorkers will finally have a really good reason to celebrate the new year. It means that at long, long last, Bill de Blasio will be out of office. That's worth celebrating. Until next time, these have been the facts of the matter. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, be sure to leave a like, then subscribe, and hit the notification bell below. Now, if you didn't like it, you ought to find a Ben Shapiro video to detox you with more facts.